They say when you die, it's over, that your heart stops, your brain shuts down, and everything you are disappears like smoke. But sometimes, something strange happens. A child speaks a name they've never heard before. A person visits a place they've never been, but somehow knows every corner of it. A toddler, barely able to talk, starts describing a war they were never taught about, in detail. Names, smells, weapons, death. What if death is not the end? What if you've been here before? Around the world, in every culture, there are whispers of another possibility, that when the body dies, the soul moves on. Reincarnation, not fantasy, not fiction, but a cycle of life, death, and return. And for some people, this isn't just belief, it's memory. In India, a young boy named Titu was born into a family of farmers. But from the time he could speak, he insisted he was someone else. He said he had a wife, children, a business in another city. His parents were confused, amused even, until he started naming streets, shops, people. They investigated, and what they found was chilling. Every name he gave, every place he described was real. A man matching the boy's descriptions had lived there, and he had died years before Titu was born. Then there was Cameron, a little boy in Scotland. Barely old enough to form full sentences, he would talk constantly about a white house by the sea. He said he had brothers, a black and white dog, a father who died when he was young. He described the coastline, the rocks, the layout of the house, with detail no map could offer. When his family took him to a remote island matching his stories, he instantly recognized it. He cried. He pointed to the house and said, "That's where I lived." No one had told him, but he knew. Stories like these aren't rare. In fact, there are over 2,000 documented cases of children recalling past lives, studied and recorded by Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist at the University of Virginia. He didn't work in mysticism. He followed the evidence. Stevenson spent decades interviewing children, verifying names, locations, and events they remembered. In many cases, these children were able to identify people from their previous lives, and those people confirmed the details. Some children even had physical birthmarks or deformities corresponding exactly to the injuries or cause of death of the individuals they claimed to have been. One child had a mark on his chest, a small, perfect circle. He said he was shot in his former life. When researchers located the man he claimed to be, they found a death certificate, gunshot wound to the chest, exactly where the child's mark was. Coincidence? Imagination? Or something else? And it's not just children. Adults undergoing deep hypnosis, a process known as past life regression, have reported vivid memories of entirely different lives. Some recall events, clothing, and customs from centuries past. Some even speak languages they've never studied. Though regression is controversial and prone to suggestion, some of the stories it reveals are eerily consistent across cultures, across time. But reincarnation is not a new idea. It's ancient, woven into the roots of human civilization. In Hinduism, the soul, or Atman, is eternal. It passes through bodies like a traveler through cities. Your actions or karma determine where you go next. A life of compassion leads to rebirth in a higher form. A life of cruelty brings you back lower. The goal is to escape the cycle entirely, to reach moksha, a liberation from suffering. In Buddhism, the concept is similar, but more introspective. There is no permanent soul, only a stream of consciousness, constantly changing, moving from one body to another like a flame lighting a new candle. Identity is not fixed. Attachment causes suffering. Enlightenment frees you from the cycle. In ancient Egypt, death was not an end but a transformation. The soul split into parts, Ka, the life force, and Ba, the personality. If judged pure, they reunited to form the Ak, which could return. Pharaohs prepared tombs not as graves, but as gateways to another life. Even the Greeks had whispers of rebirth. Pythagoras, the famed mathematician, claimed to remember his past lives. He taught that the soul was trapped in the wheel of life until it reached perfection. And in the West, though modern religions often reject reincarnation, early Christian sects, like the Gnostics, believed in it. Some scholars suggest that reincarnation was quietly removed from doctrine in later centuries. Why? Perhaps because a soul that returns again and again is harder to control than one granted only a single chance. Beyond religion, some Native American tribes believed in soul migration, that the spirit of a warrior might return as an eagle, a bear, or another human. In Tibetan Buddhism, the Dalai Lama is believed to reincarnate. When the previous one dies, monks search for a child who carries his essence. From Asia to Africa, from the Andes to the Arctic, stories persist, not as myth, but as memory. Why is this idea so universal? Why do children across the globe, from wildly different cultures, report the same phenomenon? And why do so many of them forget these memories after a certain age, as if some curtain slowly falls over what they once knew? Maybe the real question is, what if they're not imagining? What if we're all just remembering? If so, who were you before this life? And who might you be next? We search for answers in ancient texts, in stories whispered across generations. But in a world governed by science and reason, belief is not enough. We want proof. We want mechanisms. How exactly could a soul or consciousness travel from one body to another? Is there a system behind this mystery, or are we simply seeing patterns in the chaos? Let's begin where all modern questions begin: the brain. To most neuroscientists, consciousness is an emergent property. Billions of neurons fire in complex patterns, generating thoughts, emotions, identity. When the brain dies, the mind, they say, dies with it. No soul, no afterlife, just silence. But not all scientists agree. Dr. Stuart Hameroff, an anesthesiologist, and Sir Roger Penrose, a physicist, proposed a radical theory, orchestrated objective reduction, or OR. It suggests that consciousness arises not from neurons, but from quantum processes within the microtubules inside neurons, the very scaffolding of brain cells. And quantum information, unlike classical data, doesn't simply vanish. In this theory, consciousness isn't confined to the brain. It's a form of quantum energy that can exist beyond the body. When we die, that energy, that information, may return to the universe. And perhaps, under the right conditions, it reattaches to another brain. This isn't a fantasy. In physics, information is never truly lost. Even when matter burns or collapses into a black hole, the data encoded within it persists in some form. Could consciousness, who we are, follow similar rules? And if it does, could that explain why some children seem to remember lives they never lived? Of course, skeptics argue that memory is unreliable. Children are suggestible. They absorb stories, overhear conversations, and mix fantasy with fact. That's true, children do imagine. But some of the re-encounter details are too precise, too obscure, and too consistent to be dismissed so easily. One case involved a boy in Lebanon who insisted he had been a mechanic who died in a car crash. He named the village, the model of the car, and the name of the man whose vehicle hit him. Investigators followed his story, and everything matched. Even the man he accused, who was still alive, confessed to the accident. How could the boy have known? Another child in Thailand had scars on his head and remembered being murdered with an axe. He identified the village, the people, and even the location of the body. Authorities investigated and uncovered skeletal remains exactly where he described. Coincidence? Collective delusion? Or fragments of memory carried across time and flesh? Beyond anecdotal accounts, some studies have explored birthmarks and congenital conditions in children who claim past lives. In many cases, the marks align eerily with the previous individual's fatal wounds, bullet holes, stab wounds, surgical scars, often without any genetic or environmental explanation. There are also children who demonstrate skills or knowledge they were never taught. Languages, historical facts, unusual fears. A boy terrified of planes turned out to recall being a WOI-2 fighter pilot, down to the name of his aircraft carrier and the model of his plane. His family verified every detail through military archives. Still, these accounts are not definitive. Science demands replicability, control, data. And reincarnation, by nature, defies control. You can't place a soul in a lab. You can't predict who will remember. So the evidence remains, for now, in the shadows, compelling, but not conclusive. Yet even in the absence of certainty, the implications are staggering. If reincarnation is real, what does that say about identity? Are you the person you are or the person you were? If you once lived as someone else, loved, hated, created, destroyed, does that past self still shape you? And what about karma? Many traditions teach that your actions carry weight across lives, that cruelty, greed, and selfishness create debt, and kindness, compassion, and truthfulness create harmony. What if justice doesn't always arrive in one lifetime? What if it unfolds over several? Suddenly, life becomes less of a single journey and more of a thread in a vast, invisible web. One life is not the whole story, it's just a chapter. Some theories even suggest that the soul chooses its next life, that the people we meet, the struggles we endure, the joy we experience are all part of a larger lesson. Not punishment, not reward, but growth, evolution of spirit. Others go further, that families, lovers, and even enemies are souls traveling together across lifetimes, playing different roles in each story. A mother in one life, a son in another, a rival in the next. This idea brings with it comfort and terror. If we return again and again, do we ever truly rest? Or are we caught in a loop we can't escape? Buddhism and Hinduism offer a solution, enlightenment. By shedding attachment, illusion, and ego, we can break free from the cycle. We can step off the wheel. But in the West, the concept is met with skepticism. Reincarnation is seen as mystical, unprovable, even dangerous, and yet it fascinates. Films, books, and stories echo the question, what if I've been here before? Even some scientists, once dismissive, are beginning to ask, what if consciousness is not bound by flesh? What if it's more like a field and we're just antennas? If that's true, then when one body breaks, the signal simply finds another. Maybe the soul doesn't ride the body like a passenger. Maybe it's the road itself, winding, evolving, remembering. And if even part of this is true, if memory, identity, or energy survives death, then what we do in this life matters far more than we imagine. Not because of divine reward or punishment, but because we might return. And next time, the roles could be reversed. The oppressed may become the powerful. The child may become the parent. The hunter may become the hunted. So what will you leave behind in this life? Who might you meet again? And when you look into the eyes of a stranger, will you recognize yourself?